Hi, and welcome to Florida's Great Northwest. This is our regional economic development marketing organization. I'm your host, Larry Sassano, and my special guest today is Gray Swoope. Gray, welcome.
Thank you, Larry. Good to be here.
It's good to have you on the show. Gray, as many of you already know, is the Secretary of Commerce for the state of Florida and President and CEO of Enterprise Florida. So he holds a double title, and believe me, he also runs around like two separate people. I mean, that's how busy this man is. So to get him on our show for this is really a treat. So I want to talk a little bit about Enterprise Florida itself. It's been in existence how many years now?
17 years.
Wow. And you know, I was in Tallahassee when Enterprise Florida was first introduced to the state. And you know, being a private public partnership, how do you see the organization today from perhaps the way it might have been back then, Gray?
Well, it's a lot different, but the fundamental principles are the same. And so I like to use this description. So if you were going to set up, if you looked at a state and said, look, we want to have an A game in economic development.
Yeah.
But the way we've been doing it for years has just not been necessarily an A game. And so 17 years ago, a Democratic governor, Lawton Chiles, said we want to change the way we do economic development in the state of Florida. And he said, look, if I'm going to do an A game, I need to bring in business leadership to help set policy, help set direction, and let that be the voice, policy setting, to give the staff a direction. Also said, I need to move it out of government. Government does not sometimes respond quickly, as you know. And so the idea was to set up a private, not-for-profit 501c3 corporation, right, which Enterprise Florida is. It's a private corporation. Contracts with the state to do economic development. Mm-hmm. Core mission being business development and doing in trade. So if there's a change in the marketplace, we can move resources, we can move people without going through a bureaucratic process of approvals, personnel boards, those types of things. So I've been on the job now about 2.5 years with Governor Scott, and he serves as chair of that board. And we have 63 board members, business leadership from here in the Panhandle all the way south to the Keys. And so the whole state is represented. And what the beautiful thing about that is you get the input from the voice from the customer, so to speak, but you also have a professional staff that's responsive, and then as I said, core mission focus. So Governor Scott has done a real good job of taking Enterprise Florida, which probably a few years ago had lost its way. We really beefed up our team to be more laser focused on business development and also on trade, back to core mission, and the numbers are speaking for themselves. We're seeing results. Well,
you've done a great job as the chief, and having the governor back you and your mission the way he has, I think has brought some successes. Now, you've taken, with the governor and your team, and I applaud your team, I had lunch with Griff earlier this week and had some great discussions with him. But you've taken this organization and put it in the forefront of economic development. How did you do that?
Well, you know this. If you're going to be successful in economic development, you better have good local partners. Yeah. Regional partners like Florida's Great Northwest and the communities here and the primary economic development organizations. If we don't have the relationship, then when it becomes time to compete, then we're not going to be a real good team. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I mean, Griff was up here Monday. Our team is out every day in our communities making sure that we know our product and know our people. So when there's a time that we had the project to work on, we already had the relationship established. So yeah. I think that's one of the key ingredients in economic development from a state perspective. If you're going to be a good state partner, but you're only going to stay in your office at your headquarters, then you're really not going to be successful. Yeah. And so the idea is to really get out and spend time with you, because I feel like you and I have the relationship. I understand the product, understand what you're trying to do here, and then that way we work better together.
Thank you. Well, I think you're right. It's a mutual thing. The partnership is working, and we've been involved with Enterprise Florida from day one, but not until you came aboard did I really see some changes that made a difference, particularly for us in Northwest Florida here. And same with the governor. Governor Scott, he comes and visits this area a lot, not because he's close by, but because he cares about what's going on, all of Florida, and he's made a special move to make sure that he spends enough time in this part of the state. Well, let's talk about another facet of what the governor proposed when he came on board, and that was the creation of 700,000 jobs in 7 years.
That's right.
Where are we with that task right now?
Well, we're well over halfway. So we're about 370,000 net new private sector jobs been added to the economy since Governor Scott took office.
Wow.
So that's been just a little over 2.5 years ago. So we're on pace. We're staying the course of making sure that we remove job-killing regulations. So I think to date it's right around 2,700 or more job-killing regulations have been removed. Looking at our tax structure, making sure that we have a favorable tax structure for business that's conducive to business growth. And at the same time, in investing in education, doing the things that we need to do to invest in education in our state, and paying off debt. This governor, this legislative body has paid down about $2 billion in debt. And then you look up and you have a AAA bond rating. Wall Street notices that, companies notice that, because they know that the state is in a very good financial shape. It is because we have stayed the course. We're doing the right things that it takes to compete. And I could tell you, the companies we meet with, they will tell you that in states that they look at that do not have a very good financial track record, they're worried about it. They're worried that they will be a target for revenues down the road.
How do we compete with states like the other mega states like California, Texas, New York? How are we in terms of growth right now in 2013 and compared to the regrowth? We lost jobs. Those states lost jobs.
Right.
We've recovered. Have we recovered as well as them or better than them?
Well, there are very different economies in both of those states that you mentioned. California has an economy that is a strong entertainment. It's also a very strong technology state, has some aerospace. But we see lots of companies today that are saying, you know what, I think it's time to move from California. Now, if you need to be in Silicon Valley, if that research is there that you need to start up a business, I get that. I get the cluster. Right. But once those companies grow up and they start producing product, they really can't afford to stay there. When you look at residential utility rates in that region, some people are paying 50 cents a kilowatt hour. It is a tremendous burden.
Ridiculous.
It's a tremendous burden to live there. And so at some point, the quality of life and the cost of life become a decision. We compete very well with New York. We've, as financial firms have come back in creating jobs again since 2008, Florida has been the winner of many of those, especially the New York, New Jersey area. Probably one of the case in points is Hertz, being able to, a Fortune 300 company, to win the headquarters that's going to move out of New Jersey to Southwest Florida.
Yeah, that's an excellent one. That's nice to hang your head on a Fortune 300 company like Hertz. But you're right. Our economy is so different from California, and do you think the legislators are spending enough of the dollars on education so that the next big thing I want to talk about is the trained technical labor? And we know that a lot of the companies, Griff and I met with a company, and they said, we have to hire a lot of our employees from outside the state of Florida. Well, once they're out in Florida, they're Floridians now.
Right.
But the fact is, why do we have to do that? How can we change that in order to be able to, train the people that live here right now to work for the companies that are growing?
Well, first of all, that's an issue across the United States of having skilled workforce. And I think the states that address it are the ones that are going to be the winners long term. So certainly with Governor Scott holding our universities accountable for the product that comes out, looking at ways to measure, do people get jobs when they come out of our four-year institutions, our community colleges, our universities, and seeing, are we doing the things necessary for those individuals to have jobs? I like that strategy. It's what we should be. It should be connecting the education system to the end product. So we're doing those things. In the short term, we're very fortunate in this state to have Chris Hart, Workforce Florida, which we doubled the amount of quick response training fund from last year, which we knew was part of our competitive strategy that we need to have more money. Yeah. So I think the tools are in place. Can they be better? Absolutely. And I think those are some of the things we're looking at in the 2014 session is how can we improve upon the tools that are there and making sure that they are more efficient, more effective than what we have today. But I feel very comfortable in the direction we're moving for workforce.
Excellent. Well, we're going to be attending a Northwest Florida Manufacturing Council meeting. And they already have, I think, 50 members, which is incredible for the short time they've been in existence.
Right.
And the way Stan Connolly from Gulf Power and former Speaker Benz put that team together. And it's a great plan, and we hope that it'll be so successful that the entire state will adopt that plan for their regions. But that deals with training qualified workers that our existing companies need now, and that's why these manufacturers got together. And also, it will help us when we're trying to recruit a company. If we know that a company needs 100 A&P technicians, that we'll have them trained or at least ready when that company's making their decision. That's going to be competitive for us. Do you think that this plan has a chance to really be successful and be a statewide plan the way they've put it together?
I do. And first of all, commend the leadership here for taking on a manufacturing council. Yeah. It's important that you get the voice of the customer again, as you heard me say. The manufacturers know what they need. So a cheap plug here, Alan Vance, former speaker, but also former vice chair of Enterprise Florida.
That's right.
And a great leader at Enterprise Florida. Stan Connolly is a current board member and a very active board member in Enterprise Florida. So you have representation for this region that we recognize, and their policy really influences Enterprise Florida. But going back to the council, so if you look at the state as a whole in manufacturing, it's about 4.2% of our total employment. It's a sector that really we've ignored as a state. We haven't given its due. In this part of the state it's about a little less than 15,000 jobs in manufacturing and about $2.6 billion economy in manufacturing in this region. And so this region gets it, but the capital may not have been getting it. So last year, Governor Scott, under his leadership, and based upon a study that McCallum Sweeney Consulting did 2 years ago on competitiveness of our state that Enterprise Florida stakeholders had commissioned, said you won't be competitive in manufacturing until you do away with your sales and use tax on equipment. And we did it. It takes effect in April of next year. And we will be telling that story. But just by removing that sales and use tax, we have seen more interest in our state for manufacturing. People don't realize it's a state of 19 million people. There's a lot of consumption of goods that could be even manufactured in our state. But today, I can tell you one, I won't tell you the name of the company, but one company I know of has 10 lines outside of Atlanta to serve Florida. And the single reason they do that because they invest anywhere from $40 to $50 million a year in equipment to make this product that is now being shipped to Florida. They are already talking to us about moving some of that production to Florida because we're doing away with that tax.
I'll tell you something, Gray, that has been a bad plan from day one until the governor was successful and you and your team helping that and the legislators supporting it. We were up against that when we would call on companies around the country because that was the one disincentive that we had to work with that other states had already eliminated. So to put us at a disadvantage. Now we're on at least a level playing field with some of those other states.
And we're going to see capital and jobs because of it. We've already had announcements over in on the northeast side of the state in the Jacksonville area of companies that said we're now Johnson & Johnson, Visteon has said that the sales and use tax was a key factor in expanding there. You think about it, the only way you could get that exemption in the past was to show some productivity gain, which is a very complicated process. So if I'm a manufacturer of a product that's, let's say, in a different type container, and I change the container and it costs me $35 million to change that container, I don't have a productivity gain. I had a product that's been modified in this container. They'd do it elsewhere. They wouldn't do it in our state. So we were just leaving capital investment outside of our state just by not looking at the impact of that tax.
Well, I'll tell you, I know that your travelers and project handlers, when they're calling on site consultants, we're doing the same thing and telling them, you're aware of this elimination of this tax now, right? And most of them are aware of it. So they do follow what's going on in the Florida business climate. When we go up to New York and New Jersey or Chicago or Dallas or Atlanta, we're amazed at how many of those consultants are aware of what's going on in our own backyard here. So I think that the message is out there and it's being heard, and they'll pass that on hopefully to the businesses as well.
Well, I know last week on National Manufacturing Day on the 4th of October, that was a story that we were hammering home.
Yeah.
You can expect and rest assured that on April 1st next year, when this tax takes effect, that we're going to have a big blast to tell it even further.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll be right
especially
there.
in states that are costly to manufacture in.
I want to talk about your structure of Enterprise Florida, because that's important to us at the local and regional level. You've combined some things that for the past 16 years have been structured a certain way in terms of your domestic marketing, international marketing. Tell us about what you've done differently to make it more responsible, I guess, to the companies we deal with.
Well, first of all, technology today gives you the ability to operate easily out of the 3 offices that Enterprise Florida has. We have an office in Tallahassee. We have the headquarters office and most of the business development team in the office in Orlando, and then the trade team that's in Miami. Right. But what we did is we looked at, we had what we called international project managers that were based in Miami, and then you had domestic project managers that were based in Orlando, and one in the Tallahassee office. Yeah. But if you started looking at projects, almost every project today is global. It's international. So when you start talking to a company that's a European company that wants to do business in the United States, but you're dealing with their Washington, D.C. office, how do you separate it? And so I felt like the team should be one. Whether it's international, domestic, it really shouldn't matter how you approach selling the state. So the team is together as one. There's some synergy there because they can utilize international expertise. So yeah, I know you've used some of our players recently on one of the trips to Toulouse. Yeah. And again, in the past that would have been separate. And so now with that knowledge in that shop, it's shared with everybody, so they're a better team.
We had Laurent with us he helped us with some appointments, and we had Tony, and the two of them were great to have and we felt like a team,
Right.
and Laurent we'd worked with before. Tony's fairly new, but I'll tell you, he hung in there. He was great, and we enjoyed and we look forward to working with them some more, because this is really today, honestly, Gray, this is a partnership. We think that what's happening, particularly with our focus on aerospace aviation with Airbus and the other OEMs in the region, that really Enterprise Florida, your organization has helped us to understand and work with certain projects that we didn't have a connection with. And it's working both ways, and we have a comfort level that we didn't have before. So I thank you for that, because it is working.
Well, thank you. That's our job. The thing but you just said it. So the beauty of a public-private partnership, Enterprise Florida, 501c3, not-for-profit corporation that can move and react to the market. All right, we have a market change right now. Airbus is going to be located, just a little over 70, 80 miles from here?
Actually,
maybe a little bit more.
Probably that, and about 51 miles from Pensacola.
Yeah, so, but you look from this region, that's something that's changed in the market. So we can move resources inside of Enterprise Florida to react to the market. We just did that to support you guys on the mission, and it supports us. It's our state role as well. The office that we have in France has been there for quite a number of years. Laurent, that runs that office, does an excellent job.
He does, yes.
And he's there to work with the communities. And then to have somebody on staff in the Orlando business development team to work with you too, that's the beauty of having an organization that really, sometimes division walls need to be fuzzy. They don't need to be silos. They need to be fuzzy. We're all working on the same team.
I appreciate that. We had a marketing meeting yesterday for Florida's Great Northwest, and all of our EDOs were there. And we talked about doing something with your project handlers, either going down there again and meeting with them, taking them out to dinner with their spouses, or having them come up here and treating them, and just have a good working relationship. and let them understand our region a little better. Not that we have to take them throughout the region. We could do that on PowerPoints, but to get them to understand really what our strategy is here and how they work with that and how we could work with them better. So we are encouraged to do that at least once a year, and we're going to talk to Melissa to maybe help set something like that.
We'll be glad to. And I'm so proud of our team, though, at Enterprise Florida. We have a great group of professional people. I like to use the word relentless. They're relentless in their efforts to go out and make sure that we're trying to do things that generate jobs for Florida families. They do that every day. They also understand at the same time that they're working projects, so they have to have relationships with the local economic developers, and they're good about that as well. I look at our total project right now, projects that we're working, it's almost 300 active projects. That is a pretty small team that's working. So they stay busy. I'm proud of them, and again, I think that one of the beauties of our system is we've been able to move out of the silos. Everybody's mission focused. They know our job is jobs, and that comes through trade or business development.
Well, let's talk about the targeted industries. Obviously, for our area, aerospace, aviation, defense is primary. But we're looking to diversify, and advanced manufacturing is a big issue right now.
Right.
How do you foresee that in terms of the state targeting that as a major? And what other industries are you focusing on around the state that make a lot of sense?
Well, first of all, advanced manufacturing is a sector that we are already focused on. And as I said earlier, it's something that we could do a better job on. In the past, we've may not given its due for things like sales and use tax on manufacturing equipment. So that's been identified. I know as this session is approaching in 2014, we're going to continue to look at ways to strengthen manufacturing in the state. If you look at any sector alone, advanced manufacturing has more economic impact in those type projects than anything we do. Because of the capital investment that's involved and the skills that are involved, which demands a higher wage with the workers. So that's something that we really are focused on.
So it goes across all disciplines too, all sectors.
That's right.
And I think that makes it easy for us, particularly since in Northwest Florida we have so many rural counties that we find pockets of companies, precision machining operations in some of our small counties. And these men and women are doing a great job.
They are.
But they don't get the recognition. So we try to do that in some of the projects we're working to let others know, hey, this is just a few miles from one of our urban areas, but boy, this company's got some great advantages to working with them. So, I think that's something that we're trying to promote a little more is the advanced manufacturing, logistics, and probably get back in the construction services too. We think that's making a nice turnaround.
Yeah, they're all part of our economy. I mean, we shouldn't turn our back on any part of it. I mean, we look at tourism. It's a facilitated strategy, as I call it, where the state makes a conscious decision that we're going to facilitate growth in this sector. It's the state's goal to reach 100 million visitors in this state this calendar year. We're well on track to do that. This region certainly has had a great year so far in tourism. And it's a strategy that we know that we cannot turn our back on, and we want to support that. But at the same time, the tourism generates a view of the state, a perception of our state. And we like that because people know our state. But how do we transform that into a business view as well? And that's something that we're working on as well.
Where do you think if we still have some disadvantages that we have to strengthen and that your team is working on, what would you say would be some of those disadvantages we still have to deal with?
Well, I think a lot of it sometimes is Florida's kind of new to this competitive project game. Now, in this part of the state, you know it and I know it. For years, all you have to do is just look north. And you saw competition in Alabama, you see it in Georgia, you see it in Mississippi, where those states really get economic development.
Yeah,
They're competitive about it. They're very aggressive about it, and we may not as a state have been as aggressive as we should. And that's one of the things that Governor Scott, when I was very fortunate to be chosen to come on board and be a part of his team, I said, we will put together an organization that will be professional and reflects the competitiveness that this state should.
Excellent. We only have time for maybe one good question, and I wanted to talk about, this publication just came out, Florida, Business Florida. I don't know if you can see this, but basically, you've got a new program that is involving partnerships. And there's an ad in here that depicts that. And that's something also that's new. It's not just advertising. It's not just going to the trade shows or to the conferences, but you're involving the partners in this plan. Can you talk about that, Team Florida?
Absolutely. So again, going back to perception and how the state really works on its business brand. This is the first time Florida has launched a business initiative for building a brand outside the state, starting with the perfect business climate. That, by the way, that shot was right here in the middle of your region. So on the cover of the state magazine, you could take credit for that's your background. We spend $65 million on tourism this year. We spend another $1.5 million on promoting the Atlanta shuttle exhibit at the Cape. The business brand in our state is $280,000. We're not going to sit by and just say we're not going to do it. So our program, we've already raised $1.2 million. We're going to tell the Florida business story. We're going to tell it in places very key and targeted where we know we have an impact. And so this is just the start of it, and we really look forward to getting out there and telling it.
Well, we talked about this in our market meeting, and we asked our EDOs to get behind it. The Florida's Great Northwest is getting behind this, and we want to team up with them too, so we can show that we support this effort as well. You've been watching and listening to Gray Swoope, Secretary of Commerce, President and CEO of Enterprise Florida. And Gray, always a pleasure to have you here, and maybe we can get you back in another year. We can talk about some other great things that are happening with your team in the state of Florida and our governor.
I'll be glad to come back. I always like coming to this part of our state.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us today.